today, here's what we're going to cover before we start workshopping your pitch. And I can never remember how to get to the next slide. Great. Today, we're going to talk about why we pitch, the different kinds of pitches, and the elements of a memorable pitch. Now, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second as we talk about why we pitch. First up, why the heck do we do this? Why don't we just stick to our hashtags and all the other things that we've been doing, right? The biggest reason to pitch is to get in front of new audiences. Now, hands down, this is the best and the most powerful way to grow. And the reason I've been saying this is because I feel like there's a lot of growth strategies out there that help you get followers, but followers are not the same as an audience. An audience is someone that comes to you already in a place of trust because of how they've discovered you. Whereas followers, maybe they found you from a viral reel or a hashtag. It's a little bit unreliable. The quality is a big question mark. So going through these things, hashtags, not only are they unreliable AF, but they're not being used as much. When people started advising that we use hashtags, this was during a time where that was like common practice. Like I was really into, for example, I really liked, I don't use my social media like this at all, but like back in the day, I was really into like dog pictures. Like I had just gotten a puppy. I was so obsessed with my dog. And like, I just like got obsessed with everyone else's dogs too.
Oh, there's a
I don't know how to mute. Leslie, hi, Leslie. All right, Leslie, I think she muted herself. Thanks, Leslie. I think that's my bad, but I appreciate it. So I would actively look for like dog hashtags to look for that type of content. But I gotta say, I don't see people doing that as often anymore, right? Again, I'm not saying we do not use our hashtags because there is some reach that comes to us from hashtags. But the biggest complaint that I hear again and again and again from hashtags is that what happened to my reach? I used to get 25% of my discovery from my hashtags, and now I'm seeing like 5%. Like what's happened? In my opinion, I think social media has become a lot more saturated. I just think that's behavior that we don't see as often anymore. So we have to find new ways to get in front of other people. Okay. Now, the second thing, engaging on strangers' accounts. I gotta say, I do find this can be handy. However, I want us to be a little bit more strategic when we do this. I don't want it to just be like blindly engaging on random people's accounts because that can take hours on end. It can often go nowhere, right? It's just not very strategic unless you're making it part of a bigger strategy. So for example, something that I have been doing is when I pitch to be in a podcast, let's say, and someone says, yes, I would love to have you on my podcast. So my episode is about to go live in a week, let's say. Usually because I am pitching to this podcast, right? I know that they are my target audience, right? So I get in front of this target audience, and instead of just randomly engaging on strangers' accounts, I'm going to the page where this podcast is going to be promoted, and I am engaging with the people on that account because now they are going to be acquainted with me, and then they're going to see that I'm on a podcast. We have 2 points of contact within 1 week. So I just am trying to get a little bit more strategic with this strategy, a little bit more specific, right? So that I'm not just, oh, you look like my target audience. Hi, I love your dog. Great, sure. Let's form a relationship. That can work sometimes. But again, if instead we're like, hey, make a connection. Maybe she asks a question on this person's account. I answer it, or I'm just kind of in her world for a second. And then, hey, that's the girl on the podcast this week. Now we have this connection. It's a little bit more strategic and it's more likely to go somewhere. So if you are engaging on strangers' accounts to get discovered, pitching can make that effort a little more worth your time. Now, the third thing, paying for ads. Oh my God, I just didn't even want to write anything about this slide because it was just like stupid. No, I'm sorry. Like, unless, like, if you are, okay, let me just like a backstory here. I'm not saying ads suck. I'm not saying to never use ads. Okay, I'm not saying that. I actually think ads can be very powerful at a certain point in your business. But I think for a lot of us, like if you're not making, like I had a client recently, I think she had, I'm not going to give numbers because I don't know them to be 100% fact, but she spent like $25,000 on ads, right? And yes, she made more than that as a return, right? But if you're like, that's a huge amount of money just to throw out, right? You have to really be able to have the data to say for sure that you're going to make that money back. And when we are just starting out in business, when we are just kind of building our audiences, when we're in those stages, it is not smart, in my opinion, to go straight to ads. You really need to start to tap into organic strategies to build an audience so that you have the data to create ads that are more strategic. So for me, if you're spending money to create an audience, I just wouldn't advise that. I would definitely resort to tapping into organic audiences, tapping into organic strategies, to at least have the data to make informed decisions around ads. And pitching is a fabulous way to get some of that data. Okay, so now we're getting back to our point. Getting in front of new audiences, pitching is a guaranteed way for people to discover you, okay? So what are the different kinds of pitches? Now, I made a list, but I gotta be honest, there's so many ways that are not on here and so many ways that will be created. Let's just go through a couple of them. My favorite one, I think, has to be email list swaps, because I think that's just so freaking easy to do. I have a Google Doc that literally already has a pre-created email and a lead magnet that whenever someone wants to do a list swap, I just take out that Google Doc, I send it to them, and my work is done, right? So for those of you who are like, what's an email list swap? Let me explain. So an email list swap essentially is a way to promote your lead magnet, right? So let's say Stephanie and I, right, we're going to do an email list swap because we both have the same target audience. And I know her work, she knows my work. I think this is usually a good something to do if you have a relationship with someone. I wouldn't make this a cold pitch, but I'm like, hey, I love that lead magnet where you are, the only thing I can think about right now is hashtags, okay? So I love that lead magnet where you help coaches to like come up with 30 awesome hashtags. And I want to share that with my audience. They really are struggling with their hashtags. What do you say? I share your lead magnet with my audience this week, and you can share my lead magnet designed to help your audience find their next 12 clients on social media in the next couple of weeks. What do you think, right? She's going to say, yes, I love that idea. So she's going to write an email for me to share to my audience, linking her lead magnet. And I'm going to share an email for me to share to her audience, linking her lead magnet, right? If you want examples of this, I'm sure I can find some in my Google Docs. Just let me know. I don't have one on hand. But the idea here is we are helping each other grow one another's email lists and get into each other's communities. The second idea, obviously, is a podcast swap. If you have a podcast or someone else has a podcast, same idea, but you're each going to be a guest on each other's podcasts. Or just podcast pitches. If Talita had a podcast that I did not, she's always looking for great guests. So, hey, I've got a pitch for you. Here we go. I'm going to pitch to be on her podcast. Of course, there's joint IG lives. We know what that is. We know what affiliates and partners are. Social shares. These are kind of like relationships to share one another. So for example, let's say I'll use Talita as an example. Again, let's say we're targeting the exact same audience, right? My pitch to her might be like, Talita, like, I love your content. And I would make this something that if we have already a relationship versus I wouldn't make this like, oh, hi, Talita. Nice to meet you. My name is Sophia. Do you want to share all of my posts to your Instagram story? I wouldn't do it like that. Like Talita and I, we have a friendship. We have a relationship. So it wouldn't be weird for me to pitch to her. And P.S., I want to stress this. A relationship does not mean like you guys are texting and you guys know each other's secrets and you guys are like besties. That's not what I mean by relationship. I just mean she knows who the heck you are. You guys have connected before. Maybe you've done an Instagram live before or something. Like it doesn't have to be like a fully fleshed out relationship, but you've made contact. It's not weird for you to be reaching out to her. So if you have that kind of contact, I could reach out to her and say, Talita, I love the stuff you're sharing. And I know my audience is going to love it. I also think that I have some stuff that your audience could also really benefit from. Do you want to help one another, help more people? And commit to sharing one of each of our posts once a week to our Instagram story or whatever it is for you, once a month, it doesn't matter. You guys can make those decisions. But the idea is you make a decision ahead of time to support one another. purely with your social media content. Another idea, I'm just kind of going through the ones that you might not know about. Podcast bumpers. I love, love, love podcast bumpers. And I don't have a podcast, but if I did have a podcast, I feel like these would be such a fabulous idea to create collaborative relationships. So if you are, so for example, who else can I use as an example? I'm like pointing people out. Okay, Sarah, let's say Sarah had a podcast, right? My idea for a podcast bumper would essentially be me saying like, hey, Sarah, like I would love to sponsor this podcast. Like, what do you say I film like a 30-second or 60-second little podcast bumper to promote my lead magnet on your podcast, right? So the idea is, you know how we have like advertisements, right? Where it's like, yes, there's a few different ways we can do this. Where there's like advertisements where it's like, this podcast is brought to you by such and such, right? So the idea is either the person with the podcast could say, like Sarah could say something like, hi, this podcast is brought to you by my dear friend, Sophia Para, and she actually has a gift for me, for you. She is a social media strategist who helps her clients get more clients on social media. Now, if you are a coach who wants more clients on social media, you are definitely going to want to hear from her. And today she's actually got a gift for you. She's going to share 12 strategies to help you get your next client on social media. All you got to do is go to and then give her the link, etc. Right? Another way to do that is like a 3-minute almost. I've seen other people do like kind of like an interval where it's like there's like a short and sweet 3-minute interview with the two of you. We're like, oh, we're going to take a break on this podcast. Or we're talking about such and such because I've got a friend stopping in to share a tip with you around blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's like a pre-recorded little snippet that again, gives some value and sends you to a lead magnet. Right. Again, these can be designed however they work for you, but that's essentially like a podcast bumper. It bumps you up into the consciousness of the listener, right? And then of course we have guest experts and summits. The point here is you can be creative with your ideas on how you collaborate with people. I had someone just reach out to me saying, hey, do you want to do a joint webinar where for 30 minutes, I'm going to share how to do this. And then the closing 30 minutes, you're going to share how to do that. I think these two topics really complement one another. The idea is we'll both promote it to our list and we'll create this free event for people where we can get more people on our list and, help more people, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can collaborate with one another. And I just kind of want to open up your world to ways in which you can get in front of these audience, because let me tell you, when these people discover you, right? This is when they come into your world as an audience member versus a follower. They are coming in, they're already in a place of trust because either they've discovered you from someone else that they trust, or they've heard you in the work, in the world, in the action, and instead this girl knows herself or this guy knows her stuff, and I want to know more from her. All right, I'm going to ask you in a second in the chat if you have questions on that, and we will absolutely dive into them. All right, so let's get into the elements of a memorable pitch. Actually, this is a great time for me to look at the chat. So true, sorry about that. No worries, Leslie. Yes, you need data to run that. Yeah, Kylie knows. Swipe files are great. Okay, awesome, great, no questions yet. All right, so let's dive into the elements of a memorable pitch. And I'm gonna actually take you through this step by step. So step one, I do not suggest that you make your pitch the first point of contact. So let me give you an example. You can engage with folks on social media, or you can ask for an introduction. So for example, let's say I want to get on a podcast and I know that Talita was recently on that podcast, or she's good friends with this person or whatever. I could ask for an introduction because again, Talita and I know one another, we've got an established relationship. And of course I would say, and if there's anyone that you want me to put you in contact with, I'm happy to do that too, because we trust one another. I know her work. I know whoever I share her with, I know she's going to take care of them. So I have that trust already established, and I hope she has that trust established in me too, right? Again, like I said, engage with social media on folks. Now, this does not mean you have to have a whole 6-week nurturing sequence with someone before you pitch them. I'm not saying that, I promise. What I mean by engage with folks on social media, it can be as simple as, actually, this is what I always do because most of the people I pitch to, I've never talked to before. And so I will say something to them like, again, sorry, Talita, you're like right in front of me, so I'm just going to keep using your name. But with Talita, let's say I was pitching to her, I would say something like, hey, Talita, I'm about to send you a podcast pitch, but I always find it really creepy when people pitch to me and they don't introduce themselves. So here I am. I just wanted to put a face to the name. My name is Sophia Para. I'm a strategist for coaches. I help them get clients on social media. And I'm about to send you a super juicy pitch, which I was inspired to write after listening to your most recent episode. I'll send it to this email address and I can't wait to hear from you there. Something like that, right? Now I'm a person, I've established contact. She's gonna see me as a three-dimensional human being versus just one of those random pitches that are just pitching to her all day, okay? It will look something like that. So I just described what it would look like in the DM, but now let's take a look at what that's gonna look like in the actual pitch, okay? So again, I have titled it Podcast Pitch Follow Up from the DM, right? And I can now do that because I did just send her a DM, but also on her end, she might have not heard the DM yet, or maybe it's in the request folder, or maybe she forgot about it. Now it just looks like we have had a relationship. It's a little sneaky, that one. That's a little bit of a ninja move, but it's not a lie either. So I'm feeling okay about it. So then my response is, hi, Taylor. Following up from our chat in the DM. Oh, I'll give you some backstory on this. We started a conversation about me coming onto your podcast to talk about the algorithm, and I thought it'd be easier to reach out here. So this is an example of, I shared that I was doing exactly what I just told you to do, where I share a DM introducing myself, but I shared in that DM why I was inspired to reach out, which was in an interview I just listened to, the Instagram expert that she had spoken to, she basically was like, can you explain how the algorithm works? And her response was, you know what? I have to be honest. I don't actually know. I follow my gut, and I'm not the expert that talks about the algorithm, which is fine. That's a fine answer if that's how she feels. But I do know a lot about the algorithm. So my response in the DM was, again, I introduced myself, but then I said, I just listened to an episode where you asked, let's just say her name is Leslie. I just listened to an episode where you asked Leslie about the Instagram algorithm, and she said she didn't know how that worked. And I was inspired to reach out because that's actually my expertise, and I know a lot about the algorithm. So I'm going to send you a pitch right now, with a few ideas around how we could dive into this topic if you think your listeners would really benefit from it. So because I had given that little bit of a nugget, I guess she was on the phone when I sent that, she responded saying, oh, I'm actually super interested in this conversation. And she asked me a couple of questions. So we went back and forth briefly over there. And that's why I opened up this email like this. Of course, it's not going to happen for every time. And then if it doesn't happen that way, if it's just the introduction, how I would start this is saying, hey, Taylor, I just introduced myself to you in the DM and wanted to follow up with a podcast pitch. Make it simple. Don't overthink it. It's literally just an opening line to establish that there is a DM for them so that they can put a face to the name. Okay. All right. Step 2 is to make it personal. This is probably the most important step. And it's also within your pitch, the only thing that will need changing every time, right? So this one, like I said, you're going to walk away from this workshop with a pitch in your hand, ready to pitch. This is the one thing that you will need to edit before every pitch. It's not a huge chunk of writing or anything like that, but just, I want to make sure that we're not submitting this part again and again and again, because then you really will blend in with the masses. Okay, so to make it personal, it's going to look something like this. I really like the topics that you're discussing on your podcast. I especially love that you're not afraid to talk about spreadsheets and analytics. My fave. I also couldn't help but notice that you haven't had a social media strategist on in 32 episodes, unless I missed one. So I was inspired to reach out. So one of the habits I have when I'm pitching is I will open up their podcast and I will just count the last time they had a social media expert, because I feel like that's just such a personal note. Like, I kind of noticed this, and it kind of makes, if she hasn't realized that, she'll be like, oh, damn. has it been that long since we talked about social media? And now I'm just a little bit more relevant than the other people, right? So for me, that's one way to make it personal. I'm also going to share a template with you at the end of this while we're working, with 3 more examples of how you can make it personal. But just so we can spitball around this might look like, I've pitched a lot of people where I actually am an active listener, right? Sometimes I'm not, but sometimes I actually have listened to like 10 episodes. So I can actually say, I'm obsessed with the episode where you shared blah, blah, blah. Like I can actually give specific notes proving that I'm a listener. But if I'm not, I can say something like this, where it's like, I love the topics, right? I took a look at your top topics. I heard you on such and such's podcast and inspired me to check you out. And I couldn't help but notice that you haven't had a social media strategist on blah, blah. Like the point here is just to make it look like you spent a little bit of time choosing this person, that it was an intentional choice versus, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. That's the part you're trying to avoid with this step. You want to look intentional in your pitching. Okay, step 3, introduce yourself. And oh yeah, I like this. So give a sneak peek into how juicy your bio will be. Yeah, let me see if I can remember why I wrote that part, but I'm sure it'll come to me. Okay, so introduce yourself. It'll look something like this, and this is probably the part where you guys all write this every single day. I am the founder and head social media strategist at Coach Social. I'm the creator of What the Heck to Post, where we help coaches get more clients, meaningful engagement, and confidence on social media. Now, I chose a very basic bio, but I have seen some people say I'm the founder and head social media strategist. I'm best known for creating X percentage conversion rate for my clients who work in this space. The idea here is to just make it like, just to highlight parts of your credibility and your experience, right, as a business owner. But like I said, like there's nothing in here that's special other than really the name of my membership and what I help statement. So if you haven't been in business long enough to have these like crazy like resume, that's okay. Just talk about what you help people do, because this line is really going to help her understand how you fit into her community, right? Does your audience need what you help them create, right? Don't forget, something I could have done better with this I help statement is I help coaches do this without that, right? So like seed the pain they're trying to avoid or something like that. Because again, a lot of these people, like when people pitch to me, I know very well what you guys are struggling with. So if someone says something like, I help people get clients only posting once a month, right? I know that you might love the idea of posting once a month, but I also know that's very unrealistic for most people. So for me, I'm already gonna be like, you're not right for me, right? So the more the more specific you can be and how you help people was going to help them make a decision if you're right for them. But also, like, you want to be right for that community. You don't want to be pitching to a community where you're just not going to find your perfect fit client. So that type of specificity is helpful for both of you. All right, step 4. And before I get to step 4, because now this is where the tire hits the road. I'm just checking the chat. Okay, hey Jen. All right, cool. All right, step 4, give specific topic ideas that make sense on this podcast. So, hint, add some very personal options as well as some story options. Okay, so I'm gonna walk you through exactly what that means. I have a little bit of a strategy behind how I pick my topics, and this is something we'll be brainstorming today. Okay, here are some ideas around where I thought our chat could go. So I'm going to read this and then I'm going to explain the thinking behind how I chose these. Number 1, why you can still get clients when your content tanks. Number 2, how I get new members into my membership every week with no paid marketing and sometimes without any new content. Number 3, how social media supports a launch. I have a process that would be especially helpful for folks without a big email list and for the folks that feel like a best kept secret. Or number 4, and let me just move this. Number 4, we could go a totally different way and talk about how I still use social media to grow when I had 0 time for content because my husband had a stroke at 33 years old and lost his short-term memory. I was nursing him back to health and dealing with the emotional pain of that. Spoiler, his memory came back. Okay, so let me walk through why I picked these. First of all, I'm highly doubt you guys would notice this, but technically, each of these 3 scenarios are actually talking about pretty much the same thing. So no matter what topic they choose, the strategy, the work, the behind the scenes that I'm going to share is pretty much the same thing. Okay, so for me, it makes my prep work super simple if I need to do prep work. Probably won't, because I talk about this stuff all the time. What is different is the context, right? Because I don't know her audience as well as she knows her audience, I hope, right? So I'm not really sure what kind of conversation she's having with her people behind the scenes, right? But when I lay this out, I'm covering a couple of contexts that I see a lot. So she can say, oh my gosh, people talk about that all the time. That would be great if we could share strategies around that. So really what I am changing is the context. Like I'm putting our ideal clients in a scenario and I'm sharing, I can help them with that thing. And if they're in this scenario, I can help them with that scenario. And if they're in this scenario, that's why I use the best kept secret thing, because I know a lot of our mutual audience is probably feeling like a best kept secret. They're probably thinking about how to grow their audience and things like that, right? So it's the context that is becoming the topics. And PS, sometimes I will change the topics if I'm like, for example, I just pitched, and I actually did get this podcast. I just pitched to a podcast that is called something like the course launch podcast. Like it's a very specific title, right? It's not like, oh, we help like coaches do this. It's like, no, we're talking about launches on this podcast and only launches. So each topic was something about a scenario within a launch. So like that would be a one time where I might change it. But for the most part, the tip and the strategy behind each of these scenarios, very, very similar. It's just the context. And then I throw in a tip that is something about my personal story. And the reason I do that is because whether she chooses it or not, it gives her a sense of my own story. Like what kind of interesting conversation outside of here's a tip and here's a tip and here's a tip, which a lot of her people that are pitching to her will share. Now I can kind of share, this is something that I went through in my life, and this is where the strategies that I teach really served me, because it meant, because I had been so consistent with the strategies that I teach, it meant I could take the time to take care of my husband. I had a lot of things working in my favor already because of that consistency, and we could go through that together. So now she in her mind is thinking, okay, if we go in that direction, and I like that could be an interesting story for my audience to listen to, right? So it just gives her ideas of where it can go. So the point with this part is again, it's about the scenarios that her ideal clients would see themselves in, so she can determine if her ideal clients struggle with this. But there's a lot of story in this, right? There's a lot of, I'm trying to give her a hint as to the directions our conversation can go versus saying like, oh my God, if we talk about this topic, this is what I'm going to talk about. And if we talk about this topic, then I'm going to talk about this. It's not like that. In my head, it can flow in and out of each of these if it needs to. And I'm giving her a sense of the directions our conversation can go. I hope that made sense. Okay, cool. So the next, and I think this is the final step outside of the sign off, which I'm sure you guys don't need tips on how to sign off. But step 5 is to give a sense of your work. And this is probably, for me, I think, been a big reason. For me, I think this is what has changed like the results of pitches for me. I saw myself get more yeses when I started to add this. And this is to give people a sense of my work. So instead of just sharing, here's where I think we can go, I started to do something like this. Here's where you can get a sense of my work. Forbes asked me how one of my clients had a 6-figure launch straight from the DM back in January of 2020. So I answered them in this article. Now you might be thinking, okay, I'm not in Forbes. Like, how is that helping me? Here's another way, and we can all do this. Here's a doc of some of the results my What the Heck Post members, where I teach algorithm favored content to generate more results on social media are creating. I literally screenshot Facebook group posts of people saying, I'm so happy I did this, or DMs or being, Sophia, thank you for teaching me how to do this, or emails, whatever. I just screenshot all of them, cross out their name, put them in a doc, and there I go. Credibility, proof. I'm not blowing smoke up anyone's ass, right? So that and I did that probably, I don't know, in like 2 minutes, because I have, if you don't do this, I would suggest this. I have like a Dropbox folder where I just keep a bunch of images in there, right? Now they're all in a Google Doc, and now she can see my Google Doc, right? And then finally, here's a recent coaching call if that's helpful to you. P.S. This was not a private coaching call. Don't worry, if anyone is in a private coaching call with me, those remain private. This was a group coaching call that was a public call, right? So just be sure that to be like, mindful of that. But if she wanted to watch it, there she goes. She can watch 5 minutes of me in the world of what I do, and she can see me in action, that I'm not awkward on camera, or not on camera, but awkward like communicator, right? Now, here's the thing that I love about this. I don't think anyone really looks at all this. You know what I mean? This is more just for them to see, oh, she's got stuff. She's credible. I now trust her because she has some evidence. They might browse through this doc because I think that's kind of easy to look through, right? But for the most part, this is more for them to feel like they don't have to research me to see if I know what I'm talking about. I'm taking work off their plate. Here's some evidence if it's important to you, right? I only have one person who told me, I wonder if she's a member now, actually, because I just spoke to her and she said, I clicked on your recent coaching call to kind of get a sense for you. I didn't plan on watching the whole call. And there I am 90 minutes later, still watching. She's like, so I think I might be joining What the Heck to Post. So I don't know if she did end up joining. I haven't actually checked, but so my point is there's only one person who said that they actually looked through these things, but I want to make sure that I do their homework for them. And in PS, I just use the same stuff again and again and again every time I pitch. And then finally, step 6 is the sign off. Let me know your thoughts, and this would be helpful for your community. Thanks for consideration, Sophia. You know what? Maybe there are better sign offs in the world, but I just decided to keep it simple. And that's it. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this. That's what the rest of the slides are, because you basically just read it. Instead, what I'm going to do is I actually am going to share a Google Doc with these step-by-step examples already in there. Now, before we get into that and working on this, let me take to the chat and make sure that questions are answered before we dive into actually workshopping your pitch. So I'm going to head to the what is this called? This isn't called a pitch. This is called a chat. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, why don't we just do this? Why don't you just unmute yourself so you can ask them, and we'll just make sure that you guys are feeling taken care of before we start workshopping. How does that work? Or how does that sound? God, Sophia, speak English. Nicole, let me just see. Boom. Yes, exactly. Boom. Jen, as a podcast host, I will say that I absolutely look at social media and website. There we go, Jen. Thank you, Jen, for sharing that. That work is not a waste of my time. I feel like I would do that too, Jen, by the way. Like, I think that, but I didn't know if other people were like as type A as me. I'm like, I feel like I have to do all that stuff. Nicole, could this be a doc of written testimonials or an audio or video clip from a recent podcast? I totally think you could share a link to a podcast. I think that's great social proof. For me, a doc of written testimonials doesn't have the same effect as a screenshot of something. Just because I feel like technically I could just be writing that, you know what I mean? Even though I could totally take to Canva and edit and like makes a testimonial up there as well. I just feel, it's my opinion, and I'm curious if anyone agrees with me. It's my opinion that it hits a little differently if it's a screenshot of a DM or a Facebook group saying, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this result that you helped me create. That's my opinion, Nicole. Does anyone else have thoughts on that? Okay, Nicole said thumbs up, so I think she's feeling it. Talita, would you limit the number of topic suggestions to 3 or 4? Jen, I'm curious, since you probably get pitches, how you feel about this, but I would say yes. I would say I did 4, but I sometimes even if it's even like 3 solid pitches, I think that's probably enough. 4 is probably like, I wouldn't do more than 4. I don't think. I haven't tried more than 4, but I just feel like sometimes too much is too much, you know? So yeah, that's what I would say. But anyone with a podcast, feel free to weigh in. Okay, we have 4 more. Anyone who says you don't need a website is nuts. Yeah, I feel like people say I go to my website a lot too. Yeah, I think more than 4 is overwhelming. Okay, I don't want to think that hard. Agreed. And I feel like the whole point of this is to make people feel like all of the homework they would need to do to kind of bring you in is complete, is finished. Anything they might need from you is in that email, so they can just say yes or no. Jen, I just created a freebie called the No Website Sales Funnel. Oh my gosh. Okay. Shit's about to go down in the chat, guys. Specificity is so important though. Like I want to make sure they actually listen to my podcast. Oh, I'm so glad you said that, Jen. I think that's helpful. And I have to say, with regards to pitching, this is why I don't do more than 3 at a time. I do take the time to like listen to a podcast, or to, if I'm not going to listen to a podcast, I don't say I listen to their podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to lie about that. I might say something like, and I have a couple of examples actually, but I might say something like, I'm brand new to your podcast, but I love the topics that you dive into. So-and-so referred me to you. And so this is why I'm tuning in. But I gotta say, in terms of topics, like this is the type of stuff that my audience is absolutely looking for. Like, you know, something like that. Like I would not lie about it. I would say why I'm excited to pitch her. And then I'd probably count when they had their last social media strategist. I personally like that one because I like makes them feel like, oh yeah, it's relevant.
Hey, Sophia.
Oh, hey, Jen.
Hey,
oh,
I just wanted to add to that. So like, I don't expect people to be like loyal listeners because I have pitched myself to, a few podcasts. But what I do is I go and I scroll all the episodes and I find 1 or 2 that I can like put on like 2 times speed and listen to, so that when I do pitch, I can say, hey, I love the episode 23 where you interviewed so-and-so, especially when you talked about X. So it's still personal. Even if I didn't listen to the whole episode, it's still like personal enough that they are like, oh, she is not, because I've had a few people reach out to me, and because it's like the well-rounded actor, they're like, oh, I do X. And it actually is like not at all to do with like what my specific topic is. And I'm like, at least go to the website and read about what it is. Like,
so true. Yes.
It's just like, I don't know, it doesn't take long. And it's like, if you're going to be, because the other thing is like, you don't want a lazy guest, because then it's a waste of everyone's time, because there's episodes, like there's interviews I've done, and some of it's been on me, but some of it's been on the guest, where it's like, I don't even know if I can use this because it's just not that good, So, yeah. And sometimes that's like, maybe stuff that in hindsight I could have done differently, but sometimes it's like, this wasn't the right person. And so anyway, my 2 cents.
No,
I've learned the hard way.
That is so true. And I think I love that, like, you don't want a lazy guest. And I think that's a reminder to us, like, don't be a lazy pitcher. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I feel like it's really important to approach this. We're not trying to be lazy pitchers and just like check it off the to-do list. We're trying to, yes, we want to pitch like as often and in as least of a time consuming way as possible, but also as the most effective way. And I have truly seen like these little extra work, like steps of taking the time to actually absorb some of the content to really pay off in terms of making a pitch that actually stands out. So
it also gives you a time, like if you listen to an episode or 2, it gives you a sense to know, like, is this even a podcast I want to be on? Because there's been some I've listened to and I'm like, these are not good. Like, I don't want to be associated with this person or this lazy podcast that nobody listens to. Or like you get a sense of the person's, like I use explicit language on my show. So if somebody is like, I don't want to be associated with someone who says F and S and whatever, they shouldn't be on my show, because I'm not going to like change. It's my show. And so like, I listen for that too with other, like, there's certain types of things that I'm like, I don't know if I'd be really right for this. So, you know, you want to like, once it's there, it's there. And that's the
Yeah.
brilliant part of podcasts. It's not like a Facebook Live that kind of it's there, but it sort of like goes away. Like I have like episode 3, I don't have that many episodes because it's a new podcast, but episode 3 continues to get listens every week. I mean, so it's like evergreen content. So like, you don't want to do a podcast that you're like, oh God, can you take this down? Because they're not going to take it down most likely if they're happy with it. So
true.
it's
I
just
know.
like, it's so much stuff that I like never thought about. Like if I had been on this call 9 months ago, I would have never even like thought about these things. But now that I'm like in the world more, it's like affiliation. Yeah, exactly, Kylie. Like affiliation is like, you know, really, really important. So
yeah, no, that's really, really true. I didn't even think about the explicit language thing because like, as everyone knows, like I'm constantly trying not to swear unsuccessfully. Like I already dropped the F-bomb earlier and I was like, God damn it. Like, just like can never get
and
through
that's why you were a great guest on my show.
Oh my God, I probably swear, like the two of us together, we're probably like swearing every other word. 2 New Yorkers, like bad.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I have found interesting is Jenna Kutcher, I think it was Jenna Kutcher, she has a podcast where she purposefully only interviews female guests. And she found it amazing how often she gets pitches from men. And she's like, you know right away that you don't know a thing about what I talk about because it says in my bio that this is a podcast for women by women, right? Like there's only women on this podcast. And so for me, that when I heard that, this was before I ever got into pitching, now that's on my mental to-do list. Like I always double check that this actually is my audience because I do, back to the beginning of this conversation where we talked about growing an audience versus a following, like we want the people to be perfect fits for us that we are pitching to. We want this energy to go into bringing people that are actually ready to move forward in a relationship with you. I don't mean like a buyer right away, but I just mean in relationship. Like that's not going to happen if we're not a perfect fit. So I think that step of making sure that this actually is a podcast that makes sense for you to be on is going to save you a shit ton of time. And it's going to also make you not look like such like a fool, right? Because this person, you know, for a fact that this is the right podcast host to pitch to or any type of community to pitch to. So that's another really, really good point. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for sharing. That's super helpful. Okay, so any other questions before we dive into workshopping? Okay, Cher, can I also speak to you real quick? How, since you have, you can write in the chat if you'd rather, but since you have been pitching and you do have a pitch, was there anything in here that feels like, okay, I'm going to change this? Or do you like, what's your thoughts after going through the elements that we just spoke about?
I think one of my downfall, well, not downfall, but I think I gave just one pitch idea and I did list like what I would talk about, but I do like your idea of giving them a variety of things that we could talk about. So I think I may try implementing that because I only worked on one pitch idea instead of having like a, you know, like a bag I could choose from. So I'm gonna try to work on that. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, yeah, I'm glad. And yeah, that part, that has worked for me in the past simply because it just gives them a couple of different options and kind of can see the angles that we can come at things from, you know? So awesome. Okay, I'm glad that you had a takeaway. All right, cool. Oh, bye, Dorota. Thank you so much. I can't wait to work my pitch. Wait, Dorota, before you go, do you want to get here, let me just drop in the pitch if you have a second. Here's what we're going to be working off of right now. Oh, wait. Okay, there we go. All right, so here's what we're gonna do next. You're welcome, Dorota. I just dropped a link inside the chat. And if you click on that, let me know that it works. I'm gonna share my screen actually. Here's how this is gonna go down. So if you click on that link, and actually if it works, basically it's gonna give you the option, okay, Kylie said it works, so I think we're good, to copy this document, right? If it works, just give me a 1 in the chat. If you are having trouble, give me a 2. Okay, I think we were seeing a lot of 1s, so I think we're good. Okay, awesome, cool. All right, so here's how this is gonna go down. As you can see, I'm sharing my screen. This is what you should have on your screen when you're looking at the Google Doc, right? At the top here, I have what I called your pitch. This is like your workspace, and I'm going to explain why some of it is in gray and some of it is in black. And down here is a template, right? So I wrote out the different steps that we just went through with an ID, with like an example, so that you can write your own. Okay. Now, for the purpose of workshopping, coming back up here to your pitch. Obviously this part I grayed out because this is the stuff that's the part that's going to change when you pitch, right? Just sent you a DM, introduced myself. Maybe there's another way you know this person, right? So I just kind of put that there, like for the purposes of this, like this is what your pre-written pitch is. Like if you want to read us your pitch at the end, right? You can read that to me, but for now, I just want to have it there as a placeholder. Doesn't really matter what it says because that's the part that's going to change. Now, these parts are what I want us to work on today. And if you want feedback from the group, of course, like we have a couple podcasters in here, I'm in here, your target audience might be in here, right? So if you want some feedback from the group by the end, if we want to like run it by one another, now we can get specific and give you some advice or feedback in terms of, whatever you're looking for help with, okay? So here's how I think this is gonna work. What I'm going to go through the 3 steps I think we should work on here. The first step, I'm gonna give us like 60 seconds just to flesh it out, right? But it's basically an introduction of who you are, right? So you don't need more than 60 seconds. You already know who you are. And if you don't, well, I don't know, this might not be the right class for you, but we can help you if you do need it. The second part that we're going to go through, and we'll give a little bit longer, is ideas on what your topic should be. I will probably like put 5 minutes on the timer. We'll just kind of work on it by ourselves. And then we'll come to the group and we'll actually like help one another flesh some things out if we want to. And the third part is going to be like ideas for your credibility. Okay. So does that make sense to everyone so that we can get started on workshopping it? Do people feel like good to go? Give me like a 1 in the comments if you're like, yes, I'm ready, or a 2 if you've got questions. Okay, I think everyone's like, Sophia, we're fine. Oh, Jem, I gotta hop off early. I have a podcast interview, woohoo! But thank you so much for stepping here. I'm gonna ramp up pitching myself to podcast in 2022. So this is the shot in the arm I needed. Go you, Jen. Sounds great. Okay, have a good one, Jen. And good luck on your podcast. Okay, so let's do this. So step 1, right up here is where you can kind of workshop this. So right here, as you can see, I just spoke, before I get some topic ideas, let me remember my manners and tell you who I am. Guys, you can totally change that. That's such a Sophia sentence, but like, you don't have to do that. So I'm gonna give you guys 60 seconds to just fill this out. Fill out who you help and how you help them, okay? Again, don't overthink this. You already know the answer to this question, but I'm just gonna give you a little bit of time to start writing that out. You can delete what it says on your page and fill it out for you, all right? So let's get that out of the way, and then we're gonna move on to the juicy part. So for right now, 60 seconds is on the clock, and just start filling that out for yourself.
Sophie, I do have a question.
Go for it.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. You're good.
So there's like 2 ways for me to do this. There would be pitching myself as a coach where I'm talking about what I teach. But what I think I really want to use this for is I'm launching my book next year.
Okay.
And so it's not necessarily me saying I'm a coach, right? Because for the first time, I'm putting myself out as a writer. But this is my first book. So do I just put in what I'm known for?
Yeah. So when is the book launch?
You know what? I think I'm going to do it in the fall. I originally said spring and it's way too much. I want to take a really long ramp up to build up my audience, and I want to be on podcasts like crazy.
So, guys, ignore that for now. So here's what I would do. For now, I would talk about what you do, and I would seed the book in the conversations as much as possible. So like, as you're talking to your podcast hosts, You can say things like, yes, and so great question. And this is actually something I write extensively about in my book, which is going to be coming out in the fall. But here's how I would approach that. So in the books you're going to be seeding the book in the conversations, but I think right now, like I think your instincts are telling you right now is really about growing your audience.
Yeah.
And I think you should save the book pitches for when you're on like a book tour, which I think will probably.
Well, and when I would actually have the pre-order page, like my author page live, which won't be probably till like May. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Does everyone feel clear on, I am sure, are we done with, does everyone feel like, yeah, I know I got that sentence down, or is anyone still working? I think everyone's like, yeah, I'm good at this. Cool. I mean, there's some pictures. People look happy in their pictures. So I'm going to take that to mean that they're good to go. All right, cool. Now we're getting into the juicy. We're going to put 5 minutes on the clock here. Now, the idea here, again, just to jog your memory, is this is what you're pitching to your audience, right? So think about the context in which your ideal clients find themselves in and how you help them out of that, right? Now, here's a hint as well. You want the conversations you have, just kind of like we were talking about with Nicole, you do want the conversations you have to seed what you do, right? So for me, the pitches that I shared, right, where I'm like, I talk about content for this, for launching. Guess what, guys? That is all stuff that makes it very easy for me to seed What the Heck to Post. It makes it very easy for What the Heck to Post to just so organically and without any intention just pop up into a conversation, because I have crafted topics that position me as a content expert, which is what the Heck to Post allows me to be, right, in that container. So as you're thinking about topics, I just want you to keep that in mind. It's like, make sure what is the expertise you're highlighting so that the conversation can lead back to where you want to drive people to. Okay. Another hint of that is sometimes this is within a lead magnet, right? Like, for example, one of my topics used to be how to get clients on social media, so that by the end of the conversation, I could say, and if you want to dive deeper into this topic, I actually have a free gift for you where you can snag 12 strategies. A few of them we talked about today, but there are several others where you can download 12 strategies to help you get your content, to help you get your client on social media, right? So now I'm adding people to my email list. So give these thoughts, give this some, like, that's the question you need to be asking yourself. Where are you driving people? How are you positioning yourself as an expert? What is the expertise that you want to put into people's minds? Like, how do you want people to see you? What kind of expert do you want them to see you as? I think that's a better question. And then finally, the personal story can sometimes be a tricky one for people to come up with, right? But I think actually, if you give it some thought, there's probably a personal story that you can relate to with a lot of your audience members, right? Like, what's something that it might even come down to, why did you get into this? Like, what is the big transition moment that you went through, the transformation moment that you went through to get to where you are right now, so that you could be an expert in this space? It's probably something living in there. Okay, so I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock. Don't judge, just write. And if we have to whittle it down, we can do that afterwards. Okay, so I'm putting 5 minutes on the clock. Is everyone good to go? All right, let's do this, guys. Don't judge, just write. All right. Okay, can you screen share your pitch ideas for Inspo Sophia? Kylie, they're actually in the document at the bottom. I have them listed here. Where's Kylie? I can't see her face. Oh, do you see them? Okay. No, you know what? It's funny. As you guys are working, I was like, I probably should have told them that I have like a bunch of examples down there, but so So we're on the same wavelength. Okay. So does anyone want to share what they've come up with to get some feedback? And if you do, just unmute yourself and talk, because I can't actually see all of your beautiful faces.
Hi.
Hi, Cher. That's Cher, right? Is that Cher?
Yeah.
Or-
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would love to hear your ideas. So what do you got?
Okay. Let me pull up my screen right here. Okay, so it says, my name is Cher Campbell, and I help women over 30 who've realized they can't eat like they did in their 20s anymore. I help them create healthy habits so that they can look good now and feel great later. All right, so that's the intro.
Love
Keep
it.
going.
Keep going. Let's hear your topics.
Okay, so this is kind of tough. I just wrote down what came to mind because of what you said. This is actually helpful because before I, just came up with something and I pitched, so maybe that didn't hit, but this is actually tying into, the struggle that my audience,
Yes.
they're going through. So it sort of it makes sense what you're saying. I didn't see your example, so I just jot some things down. So I put for the first one, like overeating and /late night snacking and weight gain. I didn't put the result part, but I know they want to maybe stop overeating possibly, or even stop the late night snacking so that they can lose weight. So I'll just have to fix those for the future, but that's just an example. Struggle to eat healthy, boring foods for weight loss. Maybe like food swaps. I think I pitched that one before, but I didn't get much response. In one of my pitches before. Ordering and eating out instead of, meal prepping and preparing your foods at home for weight loss. And then the fourth one is, so my personal story, why I decided to sort of go this route. So my mother recently passed away from complications of multiple preventable chronic diseases at age 60. And so if you have excess weight on, you're at a greater, you have a higher risk of getting some of these diseases. So that's why I'm actually here. And I chose the weight loss because most people I know, they want to lose the weight so that they can look good, but I also want them to have that health down the road. So I have to tweak them, but that's what I have so far.
Oh my gosh, I think this is such a great start. First of all, I'm also sorry to hear about your mom. That's just suck. My father recently passed away, so I'm also very, just like the whole situation just sucks. And so I'm just like sending you love.
Thank you.
So, okay, topics. So I love this. I think overall, these topics are really good and really timely. And I'm sure like people are super interested. I mean, I know that for me, like a lot of this, I'm like, oh, late night snack, damn. So I can feel that, right? Now, here's one thing that I would look to, two thoughts for you. The first thing is, because we are at a very specific time of the year for weight loss and things like that, I would have like pitches that are really timely for what's the period is right now. So for example, we just finished Thanksgiving, but like the holidays and things like that, like I would have a couple in there that are specific for your pitches right now that would go away in like January, right? They'd be swapped out for something else in January. But I would just be mindful of sometimes these podcasts, just keep this in mind, and articles, if you're pitching to Thrive Magazine or Mind Body Green or things like that, they are looking for topics about what's happening in the world so that they can leverage hashtags and things like that. So keep in mind that maybe it's the exact same topics, but you just throw in like, again, this is bad because I'm not in your industry, but like how to stop overeating during the holidays and replace blah, blah, blah. Like, so we're all, it's the same topic, but we're just adding the holidays just to make it like relevant, right? The other thing that I would think about is, I put I can't read my notes. I like wrote down what you said, but I don't know what the heck I wrote. But I think that ordering and eating out instead, is that one of your topics? Sorry.
Like meal prepping. So, like I have one of my clients, she's in my my group coaching, and her thing, she orders every, she works 9 to 5, she's a teacher, she gets home and she orders dinner and then she brings it for lunch, but it's not the best meal. So she's like, oh my God, I went to the doctor and I've gained some weight and I'm so depressed. And she's like, I know what it is, but it's like, I have no time. So she just keeps repeating the cycle each week, and it's a struggle for her. So
Love it.
where I actually
Okay.
got the ideas. Mhm.
So here's where my brain is. Meal prepping as a topic is super awesome, but also very broad. So what I would say is something along the line, and again, like, this is not my industry, so I'm probably going to use all the wrong language and stuff, but I would be like, how to meal, if your audience is like, let's say busy moms or whatever, just so I can come up with an example, like how to meal prep if you're working a 9 to 5 job, have 3.5 kids, and a back-to-back schedule with no time to cook. Like, I would kind of I would flesh it out so that it's like speaking to the context of an audience member versus just like a general topic. Does that make sense? Just want to make sure that I'm speaking the right language here. So I think that would be like the one thing. I think the topics themselves, again, add some relevant stuff. Thanksgiving, holidays, like St. Patrick's Day, if it's relevant to you, like as holidays come, like just be mindful of your calendar. Valentine's Day, like maybe there's something about like loving your body no matter what weight you're at, like, and it can be like a Valentine's Day themed something, right? And or that could be in the context. So you could say, this is my topic, and then you could say, I love this topic specifically for right now as we move into Valentine's Day, and this is the experience of our clients. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think fleshing out the context or the situation that we're in so that they can just get really specific as possible and how they are thinking about their podcast schedule. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps. Thank
Okay,
you.
awesome. All right, anyone else want to share? Does Talita want to share? Oh, no, Stephanie raised her hand. Sorry, Talita, I don't know if you raised your hand either. I couldn't see your face, but Stephanie, go for it.
Okay, do you want us to read our intro part too?
Actually, yes, because it'll just make sure that I'm thinking about your target audience. So yeah, that's great.
Okay, my name is Stephanie and I'm the creator of the Brave Method, where I help high achieving moms ditch people pleasing, embrace imperfection, and increase their resilience. Let's see. And then, so one thing that stood out when you were talking to Cher is like making it more specific. I didn't catch the last recommendation that you gave, but when you said it, Sophia, I was like, oh, like that, it was good. I don't even remember what you said, but I was like, that was good.
I wish I remember what I said too.
Do you remember, Cher? It was like,
we're being recorded, right? So
Yeah, it's
go back and
recorded. Thanks to Stephanie.
I was just excited.
yeah, it was. So anyways, mine are not yet that specific, but okay. So 5 steps you can take to stop feeling like you're failing. One mistake most moms are making that is keeping them stuck feeling inadequate. Three things you want to know if to feel less triggered and more resilient. Or we could go a totally different way and talk about how I went from being emotionally reactive and feeling broken to feeling calm and confident.
I like. The one thing I would say, emotionally reactive. Now, was there a time of your life when, like, is there a reason you were emotionally reactive? Like
the way I was raised.
Okay. All right. So it's not like there was like a situation happening in your life. It was just kind of like childhood trauma that you were working through, kind of thing.
Yes.
Is that right?
That I had not worked through. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because I wonder if, and this might not work for this particular instance. So feel it out. But sometimes for me, again, specificity just puts me in a situation. So when I hear you say, like how I went from being emotionally reactive due to unhealed childhood trauma to blah, blah, blah. Suddenly I'm feeling, because it's funny, when you just said emotionally reactive, it's like, I know what that means up here, but I questioned if I knew what it meant because I wasn't feeling it here. Do you know what I mean? Like I wasn't in the situation. So when you said that, I was just like, oh, emotionally reactive. What does that even mean? Am I emotionally reactive? Like I just started thinking and having a conversation in my head. And then in my brain, that's why I asked you the question when you changed it to childhood trauma. Suddenly I was like, oh, damn, I'm definitely emotionally reactive. You know what I mean? Like I suddenly was like, oh, I'm that. I could see the trigger was felt.
Yeah.
Now, if childhood trauma isn't about what you coach, though, this is where you need to make the decision. Like if you don't talk about childhood trauma in your coaching, then it doesn't make sense to mention it. So that's kind of where I want you to kind of feel it out, right? For instance, for me, speaking about my husband's stroke made sense because at that time, I had to rely on strategy to get clients because I had no time to create content. My advice to you guys is to spend no more than 30 minutes a day creating a post, like less if possible. But I didn't even have that. Like my husband was like telling me to look for my keys in the hairdryer. Like he didn't know what he was coming out of his mouth. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, for me, content, I didn't give a flying fuck about my content. So I needed to kind of figure out another way. And that's kind of why that was all relevant to me. But because I fleshed out the situation, and this isn't good writing. It doesn't need to be good writing, but because a lot of people have commented, like if they say, oh my gosh, would love to interview you. I would love to chat more about your launch process. And then in parentheses, I always hear people say, P.S. so glad your husband's feeling better. Do you know what I'm saying? Even if they don't choose it, that hit them.
Yeah.
Because I think, I'm making an assumption here, I haven't asked them, but I think because they could put themselves in the situation because of the specificity. Does that make sense? So just that would be my food for thought on the personal story, because that's really the one where she wants to be able to imagine the questions she might want to ask you, right? So for her, if it's just how I went from emotionally reactive to blah, the first question might be, why were you emotionally reactive? And then that may or may not be relevant to her audience anymore. So she doesn't want to find that out on the podcast. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I feel like that's my advice there. Does anyone disagree with me? Because this is very, need to write at the 5th grade level. Yes, that's true. Oh, that's true. Maybe if emotionally reactive, I don't know, because that's true. I didn't land for me what that was, but that could just be Sophia having poor English skills.
No, I think that's something I need to work on, because for instance, I use like the term root cause relatively frequently. And a couple of days ago, somebody's like that makes people think too hard. And to me, I thought that was like not difficult to understand. I don't know. So I think that this is a realization I'm recently having, is that I'm not using layman terms.
And that is a big one. That is a big one. Especially if the audience, because I know you are a psychologist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank God I got that right. So sometimes I think I said this to you once and you were like, oh, I didn't, because I think I said, yeah, I love the coach language, but we need to speak to them like there. And you were like, coach language, what's coach language? And then you were like, oh, I didn't know that was coach language.
I don't know.
Yeah, that could definitely be something. Anyways, I think that would be my most immediate feedback. This bringing us into the experience and using, I usually say 4th grade language, but 5th grade language, close enough. And speaking to where we're at, where your audience level is, and they're not all psychologists. You know what I mean? They're all lovely, smart women, but they're just not psychologists. They just don't speak in that language, you know?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that helpful?
Yes. A 4th grade honors student. That's funny, Kylie. Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And okay, we have some raised hands. I think Kylie, I saw your hand go up first, and then Leslie.
Yeah, I have to hop off in like 10. So I'll just read my stuff and then get your feedback. And
Okay.
I've been with you for a whole long time. So yeah, this is what I have so far. My name is Kylie Ota, and I'm the creator of the Boss Up Lounge, where I help female coaches and consultants close more clients without wasting time in the back office. And yeah, so my number one is how to create a no website sales funnel so you can start taking clients today, because a lot of my clients get caught up in the tech, and I really want there are ways that you can take clients without having all of that stuff set up. Number two, how to create rock solid business boundaries for optimum work-life balance. I have a master class that I created around that. So number three, how to create a profitable and scalable business plan that generates income year after year. And then number four, my personal story is, I'm not super good with the words, but it's basically my adrenal burnout story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have, I don't know much about that story, but I guess the idea you have the context already where you would be able to, or you're still working on that part?
I'm working on like how to put it into one sentence, because
Yeah.
I had like medically diagnosed adrenal burnout where my cortisol level was at 0.8, and the doctor didn't know how I was walking around. Most people with those levels.
Okay.
And I was like, I really don't know. And that's how I actually transitioned from corporate, where I was working 70 hours a week, and into a full-time entrepreneurship, because my doctor said I just had to change my life. And when I got into entrepreneurship, right, it's so easy to still work 12, 14-hour days. And then there's, so there's just hard boundaries that I have that, well, because I'm like, I'm not going there again. I don't want to have to go through recovery again. And
So maybe it's something along the lines of like how adrenal fatigue, this is not all the words, but maybe it's something like, just to make it super dramatic and interesting, like how adrenal fatigue saved my business, or how adrenal fatigue saved my life and forced me to create a fill in the blank of how you describe your like fully functioning systemized business, something that, because for me, that's really what it sounds like. Adrenal fatigue was like kind of what woke you the F up and forced you to transform your business into something that was no longer running your life. You started running your business so that it would stop running your life.
Right.
Yeah.
So
maybe there's something, but I have to say your other topics are amazing. I love them. No website sales funnel, so clear what you're talking about, so clear about the no website. That's a huge pain point for people. How to create, I can't remember all of it, how to create rock solid business and you shared the result after that, which also is super specific. And how to create a profitable business plan, super actionable. Like it sounds like by the end of it, I'm going to walk away with a business plan. So for me, I'm like, I want to listen to that, So I think this is great. I love it.
Yay.
I love it. Good
Thank you.
job. And then so if you do want to work on that fourth one and drop it in the Facebook group, you are more than welcome to.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
You're so welcome. All right, Leslie, let's hear yours. Is that Leslie?
Hey,
Hi.
I am in a restaurant. I apologize if there's a little background noise, but I'll mute it when you start talking and I'm done. Okay, so my name is Leslie Wolf, and I'm the founder of Playful Hearts Yoga and Wellness, where I help families create healthy habits through yoga and eating better so they can live their happiest, most active lives. I've done yoga, like it used to just be Playful Hearts Yoga. And I implemented the wellness this year because I got my nutrition coaching certificate. And so I'm trying to intertwine those as much as possible. And as I write through this, it might have to be like one or the other, but I'm trying to combine them as much as I can. So here are some ideas around where I thought our chat could go. Number one, how busy families can eat better meals that their children will love using my simple meal planning solution. So I'm creating a busy mom's guide to meal planning that I'm hoping to sell at the end of December, and using Christy Miller's strategies to do all that. So like a course. And so I would love to like get on a podcast or something and be able to promote that to sell it. And number 2, how to help children manage anxiety and ADHD through yoga techniques and nutrition. Number 3, using yoga in the classroom. And number 4, we could go a different route, and I could talk about how yoga and eating better has changed mine and my family's life. I went from taking multiple medications and struggling with physical pain daily to no medications and painless days. My child who suffers with anxiety has learned techniques to manage it, and all of my children enjoy eating celery as much as candy.
That's cute. Okay, I actually think these are really good. I love how specific they are. The last one, I don't even mind that it's long because it just feels really specific. And again, it doesn't have to be, in my opinion, this type of thing. Like, it's a conversation. You want to feel conversational. So it doesn't bother me that it's a little long. I think that's okay to me. As you pitch and as you learn from your own pitches, you might decide to make them short. Like, you might get feedback that says to change that. But for me, it doesn't bother me. The only one I have a slight note for is using yoga in the classroom. I would add using yoga in the classroom in order to, what's the result that yoga helps them achieve? Because I think that'll just help them understand the context of the conversation. But other than that, I think these are really solid. I really like these. And I think like they're specific enough that if I were a podcast host, I would know if that topic belonged to my podcast. And that's the goal. So I really like them. Go you!
Thank you so much.
So welcome. Now, the one thing that I would say, quick note, the first one, how busy moms can eat better using my something system. I didn't hear the title of it, but I love it, whatever it is. Do you have a system that you feel good sharing on the podcast in order to promote something else, to dive deeper into that? Or would the whole thing be like, do they need to download something to get the system? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I am creating the system based on like what I do and how I have success. And so
Okay.
I think what I would probably do is like hit some quick points about each of those steps without getting too detailed and giving it all away, right? And then yes, the rest of it would be if you purchase the solution, then they get the whole like download with all the meal planning and all that.
Got it. Okay, good. I'm glad. I wasn't sure if you were thinking you could just promote it on the podcast. And I was like, you probably won't have a successful episode if there's not some values, but you're on the same page. So we're good. Okay, just wanted to make sure that you were set up for success there. All right, the next one who had her hand up was Nicole. Oh, I can't hear you.
I was having trouble unmuting. Okay.
That's okay.
Okay. It's funny because I changed it a little bit. So anyway, my name is Nicole Rogers. I'm the creator of Powerful Presence, where I help influencers, speakers, and artists reclaim their unstoppable confidence, live their fearless vision, and expand their perfect audience. Here's some ideas where I thought our chat could go. How I get influencers to break through their own glass ceiling and expand their audience on a global scale. The real secret to silencing your inner critic, and it's not what most people are telling you to do. What really makes up your confidence and the fastest way to access it when you are gripped with nerves. And then for the personal thing, I said I would love to share about the experience of 13. This is actually the title of my upcoming book, an Eat, Pray, Love memoir, launching in the fall. This book is a story about the year my life went up in flames, burning to ash all of who I thought I was. I had spent decades carefully crafting my career, marriage persona, and friendships. But as I watched the life I had built disappear into smoke, I finally heard the call and stepped into the experience of 13. 13 is that life moment that takes you out. And yet in this insanity, it is also a moment of discovering your greatest power, because when you are in the experience of 13, you have the ability and newfound courage to step in a new direction when the road forks. We know the number 13 to be traditionally viewed as an unlucky number, but for me, it turned out to be the most transformative number of my life.
Ooh, first of all, the book sounds so good. I'm definitely gonna get that book. Okay, so I think the topics, like let's do the topics and then we'll do personal. The topics are solid. I really like them. I think that, again, specific, we know what people are going to walk away with. And I feel like if that were anything, guys, I think that's really good, a good question to ask yourself when you're creating your topics. Like, just consider, do people in reading the topic of this know what they're walking away with? And is that juicy? Is that exciting, right? You want them to feel like they're going to learn something actionable and implementable versus we're just going to talk about, I don't know, confidence or like social media in my case. No one wants to go on a podcast and just talk about social media because we're talking about it all the time. If we talk about a specific topic, it's more interesting and more, they can decide if they know about that or not. And if they decide that they don't know about it, they're going to be more likely to want to know about it, right? So the specificity is so important. So I think you're really specific. I love that. I think that the book, oh my God, it sounds so good. But I think for this, it's a little long. You probably feel that way.
I know, it's so funny because I'm like, I was cutting and pasting stuff and I'm like, and everybody was talking. And so I do recognize that. It's just, I know that it's important for me to introduce the concept because that's what makes this different than any other book, is this concept of a 13, which, my reader is a lady in her mid-30s who's gone through some sort of shit, that's just like rocked her world. She's lost love in some way. And so I want to just drop in this concept that is basically going to be the whole marketing thing that sets it apart from everything else. And I can certainly make that much shorter, but enough for whoever is reading this, and most likely it'll be a woman, to go, I've had a 13,
Yeah, I love that. So here's what I would suggest, and take it or leave it, because this is not necessarily, this is just kind of like, I'm just going to put myself on the receiving end of a podcast. By the way, guys, we just hit 6:30 my time. I don't know what that is your time. So that means we've been on here for 90 minutes. If I know this was a 90-minute workshop, so if you guys need to hop off, totally understand. Do what you have to do. But if you want to hang out, you're welcome to do that too. So Nicole, I feel, so here's, again, take it or leave with this advice. But for me as a podcast host, what might bring me in more is if the topic was like, or again, you don't have to word it this way. This is just how my brain thinks. Or we could take it a different route and I can share my experience with, and then it's like the life-changing thing. And then you can say, in parentheses, spoiler alert, I actually wrote a book about it that's coming out next fall or whatever it is. Or you don't have to say that part, spoiler alert, I actually wrote a book about it. It's called 13. And I'm gonna bet everyone in your audience has had their own 13 moment, which I'm very open to sharing, and then like whatever you want to talk about, right? So for me, it could be a way of, instead of saying, let's talk about my book, it's like, or we could go this route, here's the topic, and FYI, there is a bigger story here that I'm also happy to talk about without saying, or we could talk about my book, you know what I mean? Them, feel like you're sharing conversation ideas versus, I'd really like to plug my book. You know what I mean?
And I don't want it to come across that way at all. And like every podcast that I've been on, I always share this story, and it's like, it really helps people. Like I've seen it over and over again, which is why I decided to write the book. So I want to make it about them. Like I want to make it about the listener, which is why I was trying to go that experience of 13. But that's a really cool way of making it short and pithy. But yeah, I just want to put it in the context of, here's what your listeners, the women that are listening to this are going to be like, oh man, me too.
Yeah. And you might even say like, when you say spoiler, I actually wrote a book about it. You might even say like, you just explained it so beautifully, and I don't even remember what you just said, but it was something along the lines of like every time I share this story, you know, like there's a jaw dropping moment, or there's like a, you can hear a pin drop moment, because everyone realizes that they've had their own 13.
It's a healing moment. Yeah. It's like, I'm not alone. Okay. You know, and then for someone, the woman to go, wait, but this could be a moment where I reclaim my life. Like I reclaim my power because of this.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I think really, really good, all of it. The one thing I would change is how you present the personal story, to make it a conversational point, and then you can add a parentheses to see the book. So it feels like just want you to know, like, there is a deeper story here. I wrote a book about it. So like, if you want to bring that up, we can bring that up. But like, this is the conversation bit. That's how.
And then when my author page is live, then obviously it'll be much more about the book, like overtly.
Exactly.
And this is how it'll help your audience.
100%. Because then you're actually promoting the book. Like, I would actually change your mindset around pitching at that point to, I'm on a book tour. Yeah. And like, you can even say, like, that's like, you're like, I have a book. I wrote a book. It's coming out on this date. And like, this is what I want to have a conversation about. And what I think is going to happen, or how I would do it if I were you anyway, is like, right now would be about building a network of people that when it comes time to like ask people to be on their podcast for the book tour, it's like, these are all your friends with audiences that are like, oh my God, of course, like, come back, let's chat again. Like, at that point, it's like a really easy yes, because you know all these people. So I feel like right now is about building relationships. So when it's time to actually have that book tour, it's a lot of easy yeses, because these are all people that are in a relationship with you. And that might mean, like, while you are pitching to be on podcasts, there's also opportunities for you to be inviting people, like inviting to just without anything in return yet. Hey, I want to do something for you. Oh my gosh, I see you're in a launch. Can I share this with my list? Like, I would love to share you with more people. And like, there might be, in addition to your podcast pitches, just invitations. Like, can I support you? I'd love to support you on this. You know what? I think my audience would dig this. So that when it's time for a book tour, you have a long list of people that you've done things for in the last few months, that they're just like, oh my gosh, it's your turn. Let me love you and let me share you with my people because you did that to me. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you. That's awesome.
You're welcome. All right. Should we go to the last part? Because I know everyone's like, Sophia, it's past time. Guys, is this not so typical, Sophia? Like, I feel like I said, it's 90 minutes, guys. There's no way we'll get to 90 minutes. And here we are. So anyways, I think actually, did someone raise their hand? I think Leslie, I think this is from before. This is so good though. Switched my phone since I have to drive. Okay, really good. All right, so let's do the last part that we're gonna brainstorm. And that is, I don't think this will be as hard as coming up with topics. That is the credibility part. So I'm gonna put, I don't know how much time we need for this, because some of you might be like, I already know my credibility, I'm good with this. And some of you might feel like they need to brainstorm on this one. So I'm going to put like 3 minutes on the clock. Let's like cut it somewhat in the middle. And for this part, I just want you to make a few notes of some things you can share with people. Okay. And this could extend to podcasts. This could extend to your social media. Like, maybe you have a really great post where you like, or a series of posts that you did. Hint, hint. Wait, does Instagram? I heard Instagram was changing this. Let me just, before I advise this, are they still doing guides? Yeah. So I don't know if you guys are aware, because this is not, Instagram hasn't been promoting this very often, but they have something called guides, where you can literally put a bunch of your posts together in almost like a blog, and like all of those posts, if they click on that guide, it's all right there. So maybe you have a few guides on a certain topic. Consider where you might demonstrate your credibility. So I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock, and let's just brainstorm what that might look like for you. When you're done, because I don't know how much time we need, why don't you just put done in the chat? Because like, if everyone finishes in 30 seconds, I won't make you sit there quietly for 3 minutes. All right, how does that sound? Okay, so let's go. 3 minutes on the clock. All right, 3 minutes up. Okay, so does anyone want to share the points of credibility that they are going to be sharing? And the reason I'd like us to share this is because I think for some of us who are feeling stuck, and it sounds like maybe none of us are, but it just kind of gives good ideas on other ways that we can be credible, that we can we showcase our expertise and things like that. So does anyone want to share? It's like, you guys can just unmute yourself if you do. No? Talita, do you want to share? She's like, please don't do that.
I will.
Sure, I
Okay.
will. Oh, go ahead, Leslie.
Oh, you can go. It doesn't matter.
Oh, wait, who else is talking? Let's have Talita go first. Who is that, Leslie?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. I'll come to you next. Does that work?
Okay.
Cool. All right, Talita, let's hear it.
Hello. Going off of your example, but I didn't know if they were still the right things to highlight. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So there's a couple of articles that I could, so New York Times article that I was featured in last year,
Cool.
or a shout out LA magazine article. The New York Times one is more specific about, I'm one of I think there was 5 people highlighted in that one, when the pandemic hit and how fitness leaders were taking to online and helping people still, get through it.
Yes.
So yeah, I didn't know if even though, yes, I have an online business, but that one is specific to the pandemic. I didn't know if people might think that was not relevant or, so that was the first option. Second one, I also have started screenshotting comments from clients in my group program. So I thought I could put together that document of, here's a document filled with some of the results many surgers have experienced in the program.
Yeah, love that.
And then the last one, I also just started, I put, here's a recent episode of #Tolitified TV, where I coach people in real time through an obstacle they're going through or take them through a strength training session.
Awesome. I like that. No, I think that's great. And that's not confidential or anything, right? That's okay.
Oh, right, because it's live on IG. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I think that's totally fine. I think that, again, I think that a lot of these things, people might not even look at it. It's just the fact that you've done something. They're like, okay, good. Okay, she's not she hasn't just started 2 hours ago.
Right.
Also, I actually, to be honest, I'm okay with your article, even though it's COVID related. I think it says something that the New York Times noticed you, And so for me, maybe you're going to land another article in the next couple of months. And until you do, I don't mind the fact. I think it says something that the New York Times, and you said shout out LA.
Mm-hmm.
Is shout out LA also COVID specific?
No.
Okay. So I actually would say, I would say, I don't, again, take this or leave this. This old is not necessarily marketing advice. This is just kind of what I would probably do. I would probably say COVID was a big time for me, and the New York Times wrote about it. Separately and unrelated to COVID, I was also written about in Shout Out LA. I'd probably say something like that, because I'm referencing the COVID thing without making it a COVID article. It's just that it was a big time. So the New York Times recognized that. And then of course you have that other article. So I feel like if you did those 2 articles, a testimonial doc and a coaching call, like I think that's great. I love it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yo, yo.
Mhm.
All right. Was that Leslie next? Where's Leslie?
Hey,
Hi. Okay. What's yours?
let's see. I have a screenshot. It was like positive feedback from a family nutrition coaching session I did, and I got permission from the mom to like use that. So that would be one. And then I have a magazine reached out to me. I can't think of the name of the magazine right now, but I have it at home, and they featured me in my business. And so I have like a copy of the magazine article, basically sharing my passion and why I created my business. And the last one, I was thinking maybe a short recording of a kid's yoga class, which I have tons of those that I've used on social media in the past.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And with regards to the article that you were featured in, is that like a digital, do you have like a digital copy of the article? Is that what you would share?
Yeah, I have a digital copy and I have a printed copy at home.
All right, cool. Yeah, you probably already know this, but yeah, I would just share the digital copy just to to make it easy for them. But yeah, but no, I think that sounds great. I love it. I love it. And there might be at one point, like as you book podcasts, like there might just be like a really juicy podcast that you're on that you can replace the IG class with. Do you know what I mean? Like where you're, just these things will be edited as you book things with people, right? So I love it. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, who else? Does anyone else want to share? Or is everyone feeling like, no, I'm good. I'm good with mine. Stephanie, great session today. You're so welcome. And hey, look, you booked it pretty well. I mean, like ending right as you said, I would probably end. Okay, awesome. So now you guys, just to recap, I'm not going to make you guys do this if you don't want to. But if anyone wants to read their pitch all the way through, I don't feel like we have to necessarily, because I think we just covered the most important parts. But if anyone wants to, just raise your hand, and I'll just keep an eye out for that. But essentially, here's where, you now have the formula, right? You now have what to include. You have a template so that you can fill in the blanks as you need to. You have examples below the template. As you can see, I gave a few examples, especially for the the part to make it personal. Whereas I'm brand new to your content. Here's an idea of how you can word it. Maybe your referral from someone. I just do not feel like you need to use my stuff word for word. In fact, don't use it word for word, because I'm using a lot of this. This is a straight out of my pitches. So find your own way of saying these things. But my point is, just because I'm doing it in this way doesn't necessarily mean you need to do it that way. It's just, you want to make sure that the homework within your pitch is complete, right? So the reason that I was walking you through these elements is so that you felt like you had a formula in place to make the work that a podcast host or a media company or a Thrive producer, I don't even know what they're called, editor, right? That they would have the information they need to give you a yes or a no, right? That is our objective here. And I'll give you one last piece of advice. I was speaking to Lori Harder a few months ago because I was in a mastermind with her. Some of you might know her. She's she has a very popular podcast, very big time, mindset and personal development coach. Well, she was. Now she's doing something a little bit different, but she still has her podcast. And she said she probably gets 100 pitches a day. She's like, it's crazy sometimes. She's like, I just can't even read all of them. She's like, I have help, so they all do get read. But she's like, but it's just deciding who comes on can just be very, very overwhelming. And she was saying to me, she's like, honestly, if you are pitching to a bigger podcast, it's not weird if you do not get a reply, to send the same pitch. And this feels too much to me, I have to say, but this is what she said, to send a pitch every single month. She's like, it does not have to be any different. It could be exactly the same. She's like, for me, sometimes that month, for some reason, one of the topics you've got is perfect for me in that moment, whereas previous month it wasn't. And she's like, and the truth of the matter is, I probably won't even remember that you pitched to me last month. And she's like, But for me, she was like sending me a pitch. If you don't hear back from me, send me the exact same pitch every single month, like is actually useful to me than pitching once and thinking I'm just saying no to you, or, you know, whatever it might be. The other thing she said was, when you are active with me on social media, she's like, the more I see you on social media commenting on my posts and stuff, when you send me a pitch and I see your name and I recognize you as the same person, I'm more likely to pay attention because I have like that frame of reference around you, right? I have some context to our relationship. So those are two things that I just wanted us to, as we part ways, I wanted to share that with you. I think a lot of us can get in our heads about pitching and think, oh, it's too much. Oh, I already pitched that person. They didn't hear back. They clearly don't like me, or they clearly think I'm annoying. Like, don't be annoying. Don't pitch every single week, and use your best judgment. And for me, like I said, once a month feels like too much. I'll probably change that to once every 6 to 8 weeks if it were me. But that's me. That might be a personal issue that I have to work through. I don't know, right? But just don't feel. Consistency is really what matters here, because you're going to be getting your own data that's going to make you tweak this template that works for you best. So I just want to really empower you to look at this not as, well, Sophia told me to do that, so this is how I'm going to do that. Instead, now you have a starting point. You're going to be getting data and refine as you receive data. And if you want to talk it out with us, with Hectopus, you're absolutely welcome to. But I always want to leave you empowered as the business owner, as the person, like you are the force behind your business and your mission. You are empowered to make those decisions and refine as you need to. So I just want to make sure that you are accepting that and receiving that and following through on that. All right, I love you guys so much. And you're the absolute best. And I hope this is helpful. This replay is going to be in the breakthrough call section. And if you need any help from me at all, you can find me in the Facebook group. Sending you guys so much love. Have an amazing, amazing week. You're so welcome. Bye, guys.